So I generally try not to talk too much about game design on this channel because I'm gonna be honest, I'm not like a good game designer. Like I would say that I know like basics and things like that, but it's all just from making games and keep making games, basically, not like formal education and all of that. But there was this one thing that I was recently playing a viewer game that inspired me to talk about this in a video, because it's not that one viewer that did this, but it's something that I see more often. And that's like, you know, this is not a deep dive, but it's like talking a bit about like loss aversion. And basically, you know, you're not that like genius game designer that you think you are. It's kind of also inspired by that meme that I'll probably put up screen now of like, oh, this is peak game design. There is a spring and there are spikes at the top of the like roof, which the player will run into. It's not exactly that, but it's kind of also like that. Basically, what was happening is they had this option. It was like a roguelite, and you had two options. You could either just ignore the like event in the game, or the other option, both of these were buttons. So there was like one button, ignore, and then the other button was something along the lines of spend money, you get nothing in return. Like 5 coins or however much. It was like a not insignificant amount, but also not like run ending. What do you think people are gonna do? They're gonna click the button. Because it's like, that's the whole point of the game is like, oh, it's a trap. You want me to click the button and I'm actually going to get something better. I think it's just bad game design, because we got nothing. I got nothing. And I was so salty about that I decided to make this video about it, talking about like, you cannot make buttons that have negative impacts and then be shocked when the players click it. I think you're almost, you know, like this goes two ways. Like on the one hand, it's like your players are not as smart sometimes as you think you are. That's why you see like with tutorials of like, click this button. We had that in MO98 with like big flashing lights all around the button and people still ignored it. But you also see it with just like, you know, I see button, so I immediately want to click it. I mean, there's whole games about not clicking buttons or only clicking one big red button. At this point, it's kind of the social contract almost of games of like, if you give me something to press, you should assume that your player is going to press it, no matter what. And I think then punishing the player for pressing something that you give to them is just lazy. Or it's not like lazy, it's just bad game design. It's not good vibes, because you generally want to make your games fun. And I think that's kind of what I want to talk about with loss aversion. I think loss aversion is one of the most basic principles you can talk about when you're referencing game design and game theory and all of that. Loss aversion basically means also, let's say we go back to that prompt of, okay, I could do either nothing. Okay, once again, I lose nothing, I gain nothing, or I could spend my 5 coins or whatever, and I would have a 20% chance of getting 100 coins, or something like that, basically. There was still a big chance that I'm gonna lose it. And I think most people, honestly, wouldn't take that deal. Or, you know, the deal changes as well. It could be like spend 5 coins, 20% chance to get 30 coins. So technically, statistically, you're going to run a profit if you just click that button enough times, but you can only click it once. Loss aversion is that concept of you would rather keep whatever you have now compared to risking it, even if there is a bigger reward. There's a bunch of GDC talks on this as well. I'll link like the one that I enjoyed the most down below as well, where there's some math or formula or something, like they did like deep research into it. It was like you need to have like 7 times more benefit than like the other option, the do nothing option, basically, before people start considering, hey, actually, I want to risk it in this case. Where I guess this all comes down to kind of players hating risk. You know, this depends on genre. I'm gonna dive into the genre thing as well. I think one of my favorite examples here of like why I think this is bad game design, this is from personal experience, like in Breath of the Wild, one of my favorite games. The thing I hate the most about Breath of the Wild is how they did the items, and how loss aversion is a perfect example of that with like weapon durability. It's like, okay, cool. I have this really strong weapon or whatever, and I could either have it and do nothing with it, but I wouldn't lose it, or I could use it, but I would lose it at some point as well. And that's once again where that loss aversion tricks in of like, yeah, but I have it. I don't really want to lose it. Even if that means that I would rather keep just using like the very like common like low tier shitty weapons compared to using the good weapons that I know are like more rare, more limited, because I will lose them at some point. For me, that ratio wasn't there. and I think from like, you know, this was a pretty common piece of feedback I think people gave on Breath of the Wild. I didn't like it, at least. I think a lot of other people shared that sentiment of like, cool, I have this weapon, but what's the point if it's going to be gone in 20 hits from now? I'd rather just keep my one weapon or have something that is like so common, like for example those basic items, that it doesn't really count as a consumable instead. And that brings us to MMO98, where, okay, I'm talking about all of these things. One of the questions we got was also, MMO98 is the incremental game that we're making right now, where you run an MMO game studio. It kind of gets confused a lot with a like simulator management game. And I get it, the UI does look very similar, and we could technically like rebrand it or rework it as a simulator. But I think this is a big difference between like also like incremental games and management games, simulator games. This was a deliberate decision we did as well. You cannot lose in MMO98. And in incremental games in general, usually there's no real lose condition. You just progress less fast if you like play the game wrongly. Because I really hate loss aversion, and I think getting like these balances of like risk reward where there is stuff that you actually lose as well just like overcomplicates, or not overcomplicates, but it makes it a lot more complicated to correctly balance your game. And it's something that if you are a not professional game designer like me, I think can be way more risky than it's worth it. That's why, for example, in our upgrade tree, we never have like negative stat modifiers, basically. You know, you see this often in roguelites, for example. A very common modifier you see is something along the lines of like glass cannon, where you take double damage, but you also deal double damage. So you deal double damage, that's good, that's positive. I would take the deal double damage any day of the week. Take double damage, on the other hand, I don't know if I really want that. And I think what works with roguelites is that these runs are often between 5 and like 25 minutes or whatever, and it's like you're not hard committing on like if you choose that upgrade, it's gonna be gone in like 20 minutes anyways. Who the fuck cares? Like if it was a bad upgrade, it's a bad upgrade, and we'll just learn from that not to take it anymore. I think with MMO98, even yeah, technically you can like prestige and reset your skill tree. We don't want to do stuff like, hey, increase your server capacity, but you also gain more bugs, which is something you don't want. You don't want to have bugs. So once again, there's like benefit, but also downside. First thing, we already need to balance just the positive ones. I don't want to deal also with them calculating, oh, but there's also a cost here with like, oh, but what's kind of like the value detraction of like, okay, they'll get more bugs. What makes it worth it for the player? Over my head, I'm already struggling enough right now as I'm playtesting the game, because we're gonna release in 2.5 weeks from now, basically. We're not doing that. And this is a sentiment that I do feel like a lot of other incremental game devs do share, of like, yeah, let's not do negative stat modifiers in general. They don't really fit the vibe, and they make the game more complicated. Now, of course, I'm not gonna say that they are evil. Like for certain genres, definitely you wanna have them. They allow for more interesting builds, but you need to have, once again, going to that loss aversion thing, that ratio of, okay, I could be like, hey, you get 20% more like server capacity, but you get 20% more bugs or 30% more bugs. At a certain point, people are going to be like, hey, actually, I don't really care about this upgrade. I will rather not buy this and limit my progression, especially if you're doing like a linear tree or something, than having to choose this upgrade. Again, for roguelites and for like deeper strategy games or like management games, you want to have them. But I think for a lot of games, you don't need to pretend to be a masterful game designer and be like, haha, I have thought out everything and I'm going to give them like these deep choices. Because it's just, I think it's just hard to balance these things. I guess that's the whole thesis of this video is just balancing stuff is hard and your players don't want to be sad. Is I guess that's going to be one of my titles that I'm going to A/B test for this video. I think that's also that thing of like, why we don't have negative stat modifiers. They will always feel like, yes, I've made progress. Let's go. Buy more shit, have more fun, and all of that, because that is my primary goal. At least for me. Maybe some people disagree with me, but I think your primary goal as a game designer or a game developer is to make a game that's fun to play. And it's going to be way easier to make a game that's fun for other people if, you know, there are positive rewards and it's not just being punished. You know, once again, can go very deep in this. Certain genres don't really like make sense. I think an interesting like stat here as well is that like Chinese players, for example, don't really like roguelites, because I feel like they have a way stronger amount of loss aversion compared to like other gaming markets, basically, where you see this often where like average review scores for roguelites, if you can see like on Steam, you can filter by like language, are often like lower for roguelite games, or like games that have like certain roguelite aspects in it, because they often have those negative stat modifiers as well, where they don't want to just lose stuff, they don't want to get reset and all of those things. So I guess I don't really know where I want to end up this video, but I think I just want to ask you to not be a I told you so developer of like, oh, but you know, the button said that there was a 20% chance you're going to lose everything, so why did you click it? This is on you. I think it is on you as the developer for not making that button incentivizing enough, where, you know, even if there is that upside, I think you always want to have, I think that's maybe something like, you know, you have 100%, you have like a 10% chance to hit the jackpot, but even if you don't hit the jackpot, there should still be something. Maybe you still lose some amount of money, but you kind of lessen the total cost compared to what's advertised. You kind of want to catch them with a soft pillow instead of letting them drop straight on the hard ground, basically, of like, okay, I spent my 5 gold coins on this, I lose all 5 of them, but actually you get like 2 coins back or something, just to like make that player feel a bit more like, hey, actually I did get something from it. I think there's one example that I came across my very rudimentary research for this video. It's like you can have the difference, I think it was World of Warcraft that did this, where if you have like the rested stat. I think some other games have this as well, where if you play for too long, you will get a negative penalty for your experience gained. The alternative is just you give a bonus after you sleep. It's the exact same thing. You're getting XP if you sleep, or like after you sleep, but the way you frame it, it's a punishment versus it's a reward. It's the exact same stat. I think you need to look into how can I make those things for my game as well. I think especially if you're making, once again, incremental games, try not to have too many negative stats, or like, you know, if there are negative stats, make them compared to the like positive stat, not like equal, but make them way weaker in like the negative impact compared to the positive impact. I don't know, man. That's all I really know about loss aversion. What do I know? It's just something I want to talk about, a little bit of my experience. I don't know what else you guys want from this video, but I just wanted to talk about that. I'm going to go back to development now. It's a little bit of a weird video, I guess, but I just thought about this and I want to talk more about this. If you want to hear me ramble or just talk more about game design, or mainly like making games and the whole process around that, be sure to head down below and subscribe, because we upload 2 videos every week talking about the things that I learn making games and I just want to share with you. And this was one of those things that I just wanted to share with you. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!